Sweet. All right.
Yeah.
I am all set.
All right, cool. No, well, it's cool to talk to you this week, especially after I went to that Fantasy piano concert, which
Yeah,
was
yeah. Tell me
cool
tell
to
me
see.
about that.
It was like I know they had the full orchestra one, and my friend went.
Hmm.
He lives in North Carolina. I'm in Miami, and he went to Nashville, I think, to see the full orchestra
Okay.
one. And then they were coming to Orlando, which is close, but I saw there was just a piano one here.
Hmm.
It was like in a small auditorium with just I think there was two pianists they switched out like at intermission, and then
Okay.
they each did like one encore song, but it was cool because they had the screen with the video game like gameplay playing, or it would say like this
Hmm.
game, then show some footage while they were playing the music.
And it was like an official thing. This was like
Yeah,
put on by
it's
Square.
all
Okay.
the
Cool.
35th
Very cool.
anniversary stuff. I guess they have a bunch of stuff going on with the music and the
Very cool.
games and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sweet.
So I came across your work. I think it was the Celeste album first, just because I listened to that
Mm-hmm.
one so much,
Yeah.
and it was like something I would listen to when I go running and everything,
Oh yeah.
because it's like really calming, or when I write.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I mean. That's the feedback I've gotten from most people is that it is very like calming, very soothing,
Yeah.
and definitely more than the other albums. I'd say that's the case. It's all sort of eerie, like a little unsettling, like a little bit dark, but in a
Hmm.
way that's mostly very just beautiful. It's a really obviously it's a really lovely soundtrack. Everybody knows that, but
Yeah.
uh, it sort of lent itself to that kind of piano album, a little more like meditative
Hmm.
but not easy. Like not an easy one to play at the
No,
same
it has
time.
a lot of
It's
yeah, like kind of like simple stuff, but really complicated stuff too.
mhm. Yeah.
And then, so you started piano really young. Was it like your parents forced you to do it, or something you did? And because I know a lot of
Eh,
kids that started and then
yeah.
they just quit because they're like, I don't want to do this
Yeah.
anymore. But I know people that
No, they
kept going
did
with
they
it.
didn't have to force me. My dad was a pianist. I mean, he still is alive, but he doesn't really play
Mhm.
piano. um he was really into piano when he was younger. He even majored in it for a year before switching to psychology.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I just grew up around it. My brother took lessons. My brother started like playing flute in middle school and guitar in middle
Mhm.
school. And I had like, a bit of a natural ear for it. So I'd sit down and kind of mess around. My dad showed me how to play a couple songs, etc. But I started lessons when I was 7,
Yeah.
which is actually very old to start lessons. That means that you're past your prime and there's no way it's ever going to happen for you if you start lessons when you're 7. No, I'm just kidding, but kids really do start at like, 2 and 3 sometimes. Um and I was pretty natural at it. Not like, a prodigy or anything, but I was pretty good. I wouldn't really practice anywhere near as much as I was supposed to.
Mhm.
Um but I would often just sort of like coast by on having a good ear with it. But then where I really showed a proclivity for music was when I started composing when I was 10. So that
Oh, wow.
was that was sort of what cemented like this is the thing I'm going to do. And my parents at that point started really heavily investing in my like musical training. So
Mhm.
I started composition lessons with a university student when I was 13. Started taking classes at the university where my dad teaches. Started taking classes there when I was like 15, but it was all sort of oriented more toward composing. So
Yeah.
that of course is heavily connected to arranging, which is what I did with the Celeste album, for example, because I was not the composer of that. I
Yeah.
was the arranger. Um, but that there's a lot of similarity between that and
Mhm.
composition. So that was a very long way of telling you how I started piano.
No, that's good. And then did you start, I guess, were you drawn to video game music always, or
Mm-hmm.
trying to like play those
Always,
little chip
always.
tunes on the piano and stuff too?
Yes, because I grew up on video games. So
Hmm.
my brother's 5 years older, so we had the NES. We got ourselves that NES when I was like 4.
Yeah.
And Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, Game Boy, all the stuff. My dad really liked PC games back in the day. So like I was the kid who was playing Doom 2 when I was 5. For example, like that was my childhood, was
Hmm.
playing, just classic fantastic video games. And those soundtracks are easily what got me into music. I mean, it's just that simple. Mario, Zelda, Final Fantasy, um, Donkey Kong, like, you know, you name it. That was the stuff that got me into music. So, so those were the things I would sit down at the piano and just sort of learn by ear,
By ear.
is video game tunes.
Wow.
Yeah. But my reading skills were strong though, and actually now that's a big part of what I do, is things related to what you call sight reading music. So, you know, putting sheet music in front of you, playing it as well as you can the first time that you see it. But the video game music, I didn't really have much sheet music for it until I discovered the Final Fantasy piano collections albums, which that's like a lot of what they would have been performing at this concert. I would guess is these arrangements that are more like fully fleshed out for the piano. So I played those all through high school. Once again, a very long answer to a very simple question, but maybe I'm giving you something to work with.
No, it's helpful. And I also wanted to ask about the piano albums you've done. Are they like officially licensed? And then like, do the people come to you or do you come to them? Like, I want to do this.
It's a mixed bag. So there are 3 so far that were actually in direct collaboration with the composer and with like the blessing of the developer and all that. Those are Celeste, which I worked with Lena directly on.
Oh, cool.
Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which I worked directly with Gareth on, and that they came actually both of those came to me. Gareth specifically came to me to do the Ori one because they needed some sort of album to go with the special edition of the game. So, you know, they were going to be selling when the game came out like a nice boxed set. But the funny thing is the soundtrack of the game would not be ready in time for that special edition to be printed. Ironically, the soundtrack wouldn't be finished, but what could be finished is an album based on the soundtrack that wasn't even finished yet. So I got, in that case, that was very fun. I got sort of like his early drafts of the tracks that I then arranged. So I was hearing like, you know, MIDI mock-ups and really like kind of basic renditions of these things so I could make piano adaptations. And then the third, that I did officially was Chicory, which was also with Lena Rain. All the others that I did are what's called mechanical licensing. So it's where essentially, you know, if you're giving the rights holder their cut, they can't do anything about it. Like they can't stop you from making albums of it's covers essentially, right?
Yeah.
And I don't handle that. Those are all licensed and handled by Materia Collective. So they do everything. I don't have to deal with that part. But it's it's legally licensed, but it's not like in direct association with the company or even with their knowledge of it. They probably don't even care really.
Well, that's cool. What's it like, I guess, working with the composer when you get to do that and kind of like, oh, some things maybe how are we going to translate this to just a piano for some things?
Yeah, I've only done it with 2 so far, you know, and I'd say it was a pretty different experience each time. Lena doesn't tend to really micromanage at all. Like she'll give little bits of input, but I mean, just hardly anything. For the most part, the only input she gives, and this is something I really like, is what tracks she thinks the album should be, which that's the biggest possible thing I would ever want to know from the composer is what tracks would you like to see done as piano? That's the best possible thing. Gareth, on the other hand, it was a combination of having to work really quickly. So, you know, we couldn't be too nitpicky about it, but a combination of that and him being very particular. So he, you know, he does have very particular sensibilities about things. And, you know, he had some input to give, but overall, for the most part, it was similarly free. You know, I was similarly free to do what I want. And he seemed to be pretty happy with it. So yeah, those are the only 2 so far that I've had that specific experience with.
And have you worked, I guess, on, because it said on your website that you're a composer of film and choral?
Yeah, so choral music, I have 2 published pieces. One is an arrangement of, you know, the folk tune Danny Boy. Oh, Danny Boy, the pipes are calling. So it's just an arrangement of that for like big 8-part choir. And I wrote that when I was the accompanist for like a semi-pro choir in California. And then I have an original piece that's just a setting of the like classic Elizabeth Barrett Browning poem, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height," and yada yada.
Hmm.
And it's just an original setting of that for choir, piano, string quartet, and that those things sort of go in line a bit more with my training. So I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in composition. That's a running joke on my channel that I have 2 degrees. Like,
Yeah.
like you have to take me more seriously because I have 2 degrees. The joke being that I don't really believe that at all, but I do have 2 degrees. That part's not a joke. And so my training's more in like this sort of formal composing and arranging kind of stuff. So those pieces have more to do with that. As far as film goes, I've never like actually written the music for a feature film or anything like,
Mhm.
you know, that substantial. But I assisted with the orchestration of some feature films for composers like Thomas Newman. So like he's
Mhm.
the guy that did the Shawshank Redemption and Finding Nemo, Finding Dory. I was the assistant to his orchestrator.
Okay.
So the orchestrator is the guy who takes like sort of the raw materials and then fleshes it out with, here's what violin 1 will play, here's what violin 2 will play, here's what flute 1 will play, etc. That's orchestration essentially, though it can look a number of different ways. But I was his assistant, so I was taking like the files that would come from Thomas Newman, uh, and I was translating them into a format that the orchestrator could then work with. So it was very grunt work, but very specialized grunt work.
Mhm.
That's what I did right out of grad school. But then as far as composing my own film stuff, I do used to do it more, but I still occasionally do. Just underscoring for like YouTube videos, short ads, etc. And I've had some really fun opportunities with that. So like I've got this buddy Kevin Ulrich who does stop motion Lego videos like for a
Yeah,
living. That's literally what he
that's
does.
cool.
So I got to do music, for example, for like an ad that he did for Star Wars Legos that was running on the big screen when you went to see episode 8. So
Oh wow.
before episode 8 played, you'd see this video where it's like The Force Awakens in 30 seconds and I did the music and like some of it's just this goofy little like mouth noises I was making where I'm like blah, 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 blah. So you're watching on the big screen hearing me go blah, 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 blah. Stuff like that. And then I've done some videos, like I did one just last week actually for Zach King, who's like big YouTuber,
Oh, is that the
TikToker.
magic guy?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been,
So I
yeah, he was on the Jeff Goldblum show, and then I just started following him
yeah,
from
no, I'm
that.
not I'm not surprised. He's huge.
Yeah.
Obviously. But yeah, I did music for a TikTok that he just did last week. So if
Wow.
you go on TikTok and see the one where he's like cleaning at a museum and he knocks over the Campbell's soup can
Hmm.
and spills on the painting of the flowers below it. That I did the music for that. But
Oh,
those tend to just be sort of like little one-off
yeah,
projects.
like
It's not
one-offs.
like nothing super substantial, but it's a nice side gig.
Hmm. And is your goal to do like, do you have a goal of wanting to do music for a game one day, like an
Ah,
original?
good question. Well, yes, my dream since I was, I don't know, 14 has been to compose for video games.
Hmm.
But I kind of hate networking and politics and going to every event and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I mean, that's part of why I didn't really want to stay in LA anyway. I live in Memphis, Tennessee now.
Oh, nice.
Long story that got me here. That would be a whole other interview. But um what I'm gonna do, or what I've decided to do, I'm gonna make a game instead. Because if I make a game, then I can make the soundtrack for it,
Yeah.
and I don't have to get hired for it because I will hire myself. And I've actually got some stuff in the works where I think it's looking like that's actually gonna be feasible. So I've got help lined up and got some ideas cooking. And I've been doing game dev stuff for the past 4 years or so.
Okay.
I make my own games for my Twitch channel that are controlled by the viewers. So, they input commands into the Twitch chat
Hmm.
and it plays out live on my stream. Excuse me. Sorry. So I've got, a bit of the coding background now and I do all my own sprite work and stuff like that. But the plan is that I will have some help with coding and probably at some point bring on a professional artist to like compensate for the stuff I can't really do.
Yeah.
Um, but it would be a game very heavily focused on music,
On music. Yeah.
on
That's super
original
cool
music.
to have the person working on the music building the game out and thinking of like what you're going to feel and all that
Yeah.
as they're
Yeah.
building it, instead of, because I'm sure
Yeah.
when you're brought in to make music and they give you something with like no music, you have to be like, oh, what's the sound that I
Yeah.
want people to
Yeah.
hear? What do I want people to feel?
Yes. Whereas in this case, a lot of it would be the opposite. So I've already started writing some music for it, and the approach I've taken. This is really just over the past few weeks that I've kind of
Mm-hmm.
started like getting a little more serious about the idea. Um, the approach I'd be taking a lot of the time is writing a melody, a track, whatever, and thinking, what is the level? What is the boss? What is the character that this music is for? And so then essentially coming up with a game to fit some music, as opposed to coming up with some music to fit a game, right?
Yeah.
Though it would be, it'd kind of be alternating between the two, and building from the ground up. And I think that I think Toby Fox actually did some similar things like with Undertale, where he'd write a track before he would actually design an area,
Mm-hmm.
and he would let the music kind of inform what that area was going to look like, that sort of thing. Um, and there does seem to be this trend over the past however many years of like one man or one woman dev shows, right, where it's just one person making, like in some cases, massive hit indie
Mm-hmm.
games where they did everything. They do the coding, they do the art, they do the music, they do the writing, every bit of it. I wouldn't be doing every bit, because I think, the scope of the game that I want to make, at the rate that I could do it and learn the coding and stuff, it would be 10 years before I'd have anything to show for it.
Yeah.
But with a small team, I think it's pretty feasible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then your Twitch channel, I haven't seen it live, but I caught some videos. I guess you do, like, you'll take requests and stuff. I saw like that.
Yeah. So
I just
my Twitch channel might be one of the stranger things a person would ever see on Twitch, just depending on what day they watch. So at its core, it's a fairly straightforward music Twitch channel, in that you tip, $5 or more, and when you tip, you get like a request token you can use on a website that I have, specifically for requesting songs from a big song list. Though a lot of the time I'll just play things for people for free. Like if they say, "Hey, play, like, do you know any Zelda?" I'm going to be like,
Mhm.
well, yes, I do. I do know some Zelda, and like I'll just go off into playing a bunch of Zelda music, because I don't care particularly whether everybody tips every time.
Mhm.
But so at its core, it's the basic kind of Twitch music channel, which is tips and song requests. That's the formula. But over the years, and starting pretty early on, I got really deep into like making just bizarre gimmicks and really like kind of unique things, for better or worse. Some of them work out really well, some don't. So like
Mhm.
the big thing I would say my channel's known for, in as much as it's known at all, is the tip alerts. So that's a big thing on Twitch. Is you know what it might look like is when you tip somebody $10, it's going to play a very specific GIF over their stream of whatever, like, just some little goofy video they found online or whatever. And typically,
Mhm.
it's not really anything all that elaborate, or it's not even something that they made. It's just whatever. But some people have more elaborate things. People do videos of this, videos of that, and whatever. You can make anything you want play if you've got the right tech set up for it. But I decided pretty early on in my Twitch career to have the most ridiculous tip alerts anybody has ever had. So,
Mhm.
for example, the sort of quintessential one is when people tip $45.67, and there's a
Yeah.
reason for that number, but that's a whole other thing. It plays a full 40-minute, 40 minutes. Gosh, yikes! No, I don't have any 40-minute tip alerts, not yet. Though kind of one time. That's another story. Um, it plays a full 4-minute music video of Africa by Toto that
Oh.
I made. That I'll send you a link to it. Actually,
Mhm.
you'd probably get a kick out of it. That's got full pixel art animations and an original cover that I wrote, and other kinds of animations and film stuff, and just crazy. It's a spectacle unlike anything anyone had ever seen on Twitch up to that point. Well, maybe not. Um, But actually, it was crazy to the point that I got a call the next day from The Verge, you know, the website The
Yeah,
Verge, like
The
tech
Verge.
news,
Mhm.
and they interviewed me about it. And there's an article on theverge.com about my Twitch tippler. So that's just sort of like the best example of the kinds of things that set my channel apart. But I also have, like I mentioned, those interactive games that people can play. So it's been all kinds of things. Like for when I do fundraising for St. Jude, which I've done 5 times now.
Mhm.
That's like an annual thing. Uh, like games that could be triggered by their donations. So like if they donate, it was like $40 or something. It would kick off this game I made one year that was a full parody of Mario Kart, but it was called
Mhm.
Schlorpio Kart, and Schlorps are like this little slug version of my cat. Uh, and it was like 8 levels to select, 9 different characters to select, but they're picking all these things. Like the viewers pick all these things and then watch the game play out, and like, you know, it's like a time trial mode thing to unlock more levels and stuff. Just really, really over the top, elaborate uh stuff like that. That's kind of what set my channel apart, for better or worse, because sometimes the payoff for the amount of work that goes into it has been maybe not really very substantial, which is part of why I want to make like a game that I can actually sell and put out into
Yeah.
the world for, you know, anyone to have.
Mhm. And then something I thought of earlier was, I guess since you were kind of or not like translating kind of chip tune music at first to the
Mm-hmm.
piano, what was it
Mm-hmm.
like when you saw these first games come out, like with full orchestras and stuff? And then,
Yeah, well, I mean, the transition from chiptune to orchestra within games was, you know, is a little smoother than that, right? Because you've
Mhm.
got, you know, if you just look at Nintendo, for example, just to simplify things, if you just look at Nintendo, you've got the NES, which is pure chiptune, right? But then the jump from that to Super Nintendo is just gargantuan,
Yeah.
because you go straight from the chiptune stuff to what's essentially like samples. So it's like sort of the real sound, sort of pianos and strings and
Mhm.
whatever else, and it is orchestrated. So you've got games like Final Fantasy VI, where Dancing Mad, the final boss of Final Fantasy VI, the music is full orchestra. It's not a real orchestra, but it
Mhm.
is like orchestrated. Like you could hear exactly what he's thinking in terms of what the strings would do, what the brass would do, etc. Which is why when that song is then performed for things like Distant Worlds, like, you know, the live orchestra stuff, whoever orchestrated that, because it probably wasn't Nobuo Uematsu himself, whoever orchestrated that had what he needed to work with. Like, you know, looking at the original, it's like, oh, yeah, this is like, this orchestrates itself, right? And then as you go on, it only really gets better. Although, you know, some people prefer certain older consoles to certain newer ones. You get
Mhm.
to N64 and the sounds are a little fancier. You get to GameCube. Not only, like when you get to GameCube, not only are the sounds fancier, but you do start to see more like real recordings of live ensembles. So Smash Brothers Melee, for example, the opening is real orchestra, as well as some of the other tracks. I think like Fountain of Dreams, for example, I'm pretty confident that both of those are just real orchestra that they recorded.
Mhm.
Then you get to Wii with games like Mario Galaxy, and then they're boom, floodgates are open. You've got these gargantuan live orchestra, gorgeous soundtracks. And at that point, all bets are off. You know, once the music just became, you know, literally it's an audio file, right? It's a single audio file, or in some cases multiple if you've got like dynamic things where like it changes this part if you go to
Yeah.
this area, etc. But it's just an audio file as opposed to like the game itself generating the audio, like you know, with different channels and yada yada. Uh, for the record, I'm not like an audio guy. Like I'm not like a
Oh.
tech guy, so I could be saying some of this stuff wrong.
Last
But
week I had
that's
an interview with a headphone guy that was all about audio stuff.
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So all that to say, I could be getting part of this wrong, but that's basically what the journey looked like, in, you know, in broad strokes,
Mhm.
from chip tunes, straight up, you know, sine waves, saw waves, yada yada, to just straight up audio. It's just audio files of whatever, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And then what's your favorite album of
Ooh.
video game music?
Ooh, favorite album or favorite game soundtrack? This is kind of two
Mm,
different questions.
oh, like you mean like an album that someone might have made
Yeah,
after?
yeah. You
Because I
did
have,
you meant soundtrack, I'm guessing.
yeah, because I guess I have both too.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, and I was going to say like probably I could name both.
Hmm.
Favorite game soundtrack of all time is Final Fantasy VI.
Hmm.
Like pretty much hands down. I think it's just an absolute masterpiece. But favorite album, it changes a lot. Lately, there's one that I'm really into. But this isn't like, one I've loved since childhood or anything like that because
Yeah.
it's pretty new. Where hang on, I have another monitor up here. I have too many monitors and Spotify keeps wanting to jump up to the one that's not on. Um it is called, so the Final Fantasy VII remake, right?
Yeah.
Uh there is an album that came out not terribly long ago called Final Fantasy VII Remake Acoustic Arrangements. And it is just stunning, like
Hmm.
absolutely unreal. So it's called acoustic arrangements because it's not full orchestra.
Hmm.
It's like string quartet and a bass and a flute and a clarinet and a piano and a harp and a guitar. Like it's you call it like chamber music essentially. It's a chamber ensemble. Um, and it is, oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful. It's one of my absolute favorite like cover albums I've listened to. You know what's just criminal? Looks like the album actually came out in 2020.
Oh.
And it's I say it's criminal because the amount of listens to this thing on Spotify
Oh,
aren't
that happened to
even
me with an album
they're
came out when Apple was like, "This is your top music this year." There was one
Mhm.
album, and I was like, "Wait, this came out like in October." And it was up there.
Yeah, these tracks don't even have 10,000 listens. And this is like one of the best video game cover albums I've ever heard. That's such a shame. People probably just don't really know about it. But yeah, it is just gorgeous. Others that stand out, like talking about recent things I
Mhm.
listened to, the soundtrack of Genshin Impact. I'm obsessed. And the funny thing about that is, never played the game. And from what I know about the game, I have no interest in playing the game. It's like very very gotcha. Is that how you pronounce it? GACHA, gotcha games
Mhm.
or gacha or what I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's a genre of game I have no interest in. But the music by this Japanese, or not Japanese, Chinese composer Yu Peng Chen,
Mhm.
who's like not a whole lot older than me, I believe. It is just so gorgeous. It's painfully gorgeous. And I listen to that one like it's almost like an addiction with that one. It's just so beautiful. And then I'll try to think of one more album. Like growing up, I would have been obsessed with all the Piano Collections albums. So like the Final Fantasy VII Piano Collections album is fantastic,
Mhm.
but also any of the ones that had like real orchestra covers. So they had one album. I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, like orchestra arrangements of those. And then there was one that was nothing but Final Fantasy 6, and it was called Grand Finale, and they recorded it some opera house in Italy or something. They had an
Mhm.
orchestra, and that one's just gorgeous too. So something like that. That's an answer, I guess.
Yeah. No, I have games that I love the music, but I never played the game. Like the
Mm-hmm.
Pathless, I would listen to the music a lot. It's from last year, I think, or maybe two
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
But then they did another, or it's I think Austin Wintory did it.
The
That he's
Pathless. Oh, okay. Well, then
yeah,
obviously,
because I heard
obviously, it's
of
a good soundtrack.
yeah. I feel like most of his soundtracks are games. Some I play, but a lot of them I just listen to them, even though I haven't played. But
Mm-hmm.
then the Pathless, they released like another version called Meditations that I think was just like maybe songs that didn't make it or something, or different arrangements of the songs. But I would listen to that while writing. And then even Final Fantasy, like I had never played the games, but I got into the music first, and then because of the
Mm.
music, I'm like, I got to
Got
play
into
these
the game.
games.
Yeah. 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 I'm taking a look, and Wow, the game looks beautiful.
Yeah, it
And
looks cool. I just haven't
and
had
I'm
a chance to play it.
yeah, and I'm not surprised that the music is good if it's Austin Wintry. Obviously, he's great. So
Hmm.
cool. Yeah, yeah, I might have to check that out.
Yeah, and then I was always obsessed with the Last of Us and the Last of Us 2
Mm,
albums, and then I
mm.
did you watch the show?
No, I was just talking about that
Oh,
with my wife this morning. We're gonna give it a shot. Who was the Last of Us composer?
it's Gustavo Santaolalla or
Santaolalla.
something. But yeah, but he did the
Santaolalla.
show too, which is cool because on
Oh, very neat.
yeah, on the Uncharted movie, I know they got like a different composer, I think. So it
Yeah, now
didn't.
this is interesting. I'd actually never heard of him before, but I know people like The Last of Us
Mhm.
music. Um, he's an older guy, so
Yeah.
he's 71. I'm seeing, and the only reason that's interesting to me is that it feels like more and more things in video game music are kind of becoming like the young man's game, so to
Hmm.
speak. Like you got all these hot shot guys and gals doing video game soundtracks recently. So like when I ask who's the composer for Last of Us, my first thought, I'm thinking,
Was a young dude.
yeah, or relatively
Yeah.
anyway. Like I'm thinking Bear McCreary or something, who
Hmm.
like he's a bit younger, isn't he? Not like young. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
44. Like that's kind of
Yeah,
more
but
what
the
I'm
first game was like
imagining.
20 years ago, so
Yeah, yeah.
he was like 50 when the first game. This
That's
guy, I
actually
guess,
Last of Us is 20 years old.
maybe almost
The
20.
first one?
It was PS3, I
No.
guess, but I played it on PS4. Maybe it's
Really?
15 years old or something.
Last of Us Part 1. It uh looks like 2013. So 10 years.
That's when it first came out,
Mm-hmm.
or was that the remaster?
Yeah. No, that's
Oh,
the first 10 years ago.
okay, then 10 years.
Yeah, the time flies.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that sounds more right to me, though. Of course, I never played it. The first thing that comes up though when you try to search for it is the
the show.
remake. No,
Oh
it's the
yeah, the remake.
remaster. So the very first thing it was saying was 2022, which obviously I knew that wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, which says a remake of the 2013 game The Last of Us.
Hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah, but that album, I feel like it gets like spooky at time, like when you're listening to it while like when I'm writing or anything, or
Hmm.
like writing, and then it comes really spooky, and you're just like, oh man,
Yeah. Oh gosh.
it like
Oh
hits you.
geez. Little jump scare action.
Yeah.
I played the first like 2 hours of that game because I had it for free through PS Plus. I
Hmm.
couldn't get into it, but
No.
what I loved was the story, and so I remember playing this, thinking, I'd really rather just watch this than play it.
Yeah.
And now I sort of can
Now
because
you
there's a
can.
TV show. I know it's not exactly the same. I even thought like, maybe I should just watch a let's play or something of the whole thing because I wasn't having fun with the
Hmm.
gameplay. Like it just didn't do anything for me. And every time that I died and had to do an area over, it just felt like a
Yeah.
chore. It's like I'd rather just continue seeing more of the story because I love the story. So
No, for me it was the story, I think, because it was the first game I played that like the story made me like cry and everything.
yeah. Well, it's what's their philosophy at it's Naughty Dog, right?
Yeah.
Then their philosophy for story is something like simple story, complex characters.
Hmm.
The story itself isn't like crazy complicated with all sorts of wild lore and all that. I mean, that would be that actually is the exact opposite of something like Elden Ring, where
Yeah.
like, your character could literally not be simpler. There's nothing going on with your character,
Hmm.
but the story is the most insanely complicated thing. And that's probably why ultimately I adore Elden Ring. I absolutely ate it up, played it multiple times. But that's
Wow.
probably part of why, like, the story, I have no interest in like digging that deep into all that lore and everything because it's so complicated.
Hmm.
Whereas Last of Us, simple story, complex characters that have some meat on the bones. So I really should give it another shot at some time, even if it's just watching a let's play.
Yeah. No, it's a really cool game, and the show. I feel like a lot of people watch the show and now they're like, I need this game. I need to
Uh-huh.
play this
Uh-huh.
game if they didn't
Having
know about
played
it.
having played the game, you liked the show?
Yeah, and it was because I was watching with my girlfriend who hasn't played the game or
Mm.
didn't really know. So it's like she doesn't even know what's gonna happen, and
Right,
then
right, right. And
but
it's
she
fairly
doesn't know this
faithful.
person.
right? So far, it's fairly faithful to the game.
Yeah.
Like
Like they only
the
changed
bullet points.
yeah, they only change things that they're like, oh, this wouldn't work for TV as well
Mm,
as in a game, or some things are more video
right,
game,
right. That's
stuff like
just
that.
it's inevitable.
Hmm. Oh, we talked about kind of your early gaming history, but I guess what type of games are your favorite games to play lately?
Yeah,
Or
I've definitely developed a bit of a fascination with roguelikes and
Mhm.
roguelites. So, for example, Dead Cells, Enter the
Yeah,
Gungeon, Binding of Isaac, uh, it, Slay the Spire, though that's a card
yeah, it's
build,
like a
like
card one.
deck building. Um, just any of those games where like, oh, Hades, obviously Hades.
Yeah.
Games that like get you itching to do another run and see
Hmm.
how it plays out differently. Like to the point that, when I'm thinking about making my own game, like the temptation's so strong to go down that road of doing the rogue like, but I want to have more of like a clear narrative with mine and like a real strong story from start to finish, even if it's sort of a goofy story.
Hmm.
And roguelikes really don't lend themselves to that, to like an actual meaningful story.
Yeah,
Hades, I think, does it best. But I think even with Hades, you can feel the limitations that the genre are putting on the narrative, right? In other words, they're finding really creative ways to fight against those restrictions that the genre would place on it, as opposed to, if it were a different genre of game, they might not have to fight against anything. They might be able to work with the restrictions of the genre.
yeah,
So yeah, roguelikes and roguelites kind of like come with some uh game design hurdles, but overall they're just so fun. Like
yeah.
it's
The
just
Switch got
so
me obsessed with them, but I
mm-hmm,
always had, I think Isaac I had on from PS Plus like back in the day, and it would be
mm-hmm,
the
yeah.
game, whatever big game I was playing before I went to bed, I'd do like a run or two in that, and then I was
Yeah,
like, I'm not gonna buy
yeah,
it again on the Switch, and then I did.
I got so hooked on Binding of Isaac.
Mhm.
And now in retrospect, I don't know how much I like it. I feel like it sort of led to better things. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it was what started it, more or less.
Mhm.
Gungeon is the one. Enter the Gungeon is the
Dungeon
one
I
that
did a
I
lot, and Dead Cells too.
I got obsessed with Enter the Gungeon to the point that my claim to fame, the high point of my life, at one point, I think I was 15th place on the any percent category on speedrun.com for
Oh
Enter the
wow.
Gungeon. 15th place. Because I just got like really into speedrunning it on, well, mostly on my Switch, but then I did some runs on Twitch. And so I actually captured that one so I could put it on speedrun.com. I got
Wow.
like I don't know, like a little under 15 minutes or something. But yeah, Gungeon, I just adore. But aside from roguelikes and roguelites, usually I kind of veer more indie, more retro. Trying to think of like best games I've played recently. I got a little more mainstream recently and played God of War, the
Oh yeah.
2018 one. So
Okay.
reboot essentially, right?
Hmm.
And I got like 2/3 of the way through. I need to dive back in and finish it. And at some point I want to do Ragnarok, of course.
Hmm.
Usually I don't really get very like mainstream
Into
with,
those.
I don't play the big boy AAA stuff unless you're counting Nintendo. So like you better believe that May 12th I am going to be diving right into Tears of the Kingdom and
Yeah.
not resurfacing for a week.
No, I still have to finish the Breath of the Wild that I got stuck on one of the animal dungeon
You never
things.
finished Breath of the Wild?
No, now I keep
Oh
going back and I'm
man.
just stuck in there. And then I was gonna restart it, and it was like, "Do you want to write over your save?" And I said yes. And
Oh
then,
no.
but then I saw it was still there, so I restarted. I got like I felt how the game played again. Like I got used to it
Mhm,
again. I'm like, no,
mhm.
I don't want to restart. I'll just go back
Yeah.
to my save. And it was like the last chance. There was like one like of the auto saves left. And I was like, okay, let
Uh-huh.
me go back to my thing
Uh-huh.
before I lose it.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild, we could have another entire podcast episode talking about what I like and dislike about Breath of the Wild, because I think it's a fantastic game, and I think it's also
Mhm.
kind of not really a Zelda game. It's like its own thing. And I'm
Yeah.
so curious to see if Tears of the Kingdom is more of that, or if they do find ways to kind of tie it
Take it back
back
to the.
to some of the more like roots, which is
Mhm.
ironic because the whole philosophy with Breath of the Wild is that they were trying to go back to their roots of the first Zelda, and in some ways they do, but in other ways it's completely different and like kind of its own entire thing. Anyway, I have lots of thoughts about that, as you can see.
Yeah. And then outside of gaming and music, what else? I guess what else is your hobbies, or what do you like to do?
It's all pretty straight ahead nerd stuff,
Hmm.
TV, books, movies, hanging out with friends, food, coffee, craft beer. I'm definitely much more in the like thinky, nerdy kind of vein when it comes to entertainment than I am into like anything adventurous or sports or anything like that. But I do like travel when I can, when I can afford it.
Hmm.
I got married about a year ago, so
Oh, congratulations.
yeah, thank you, thank you. My wife and I like mostly the same things, and we're
That's
both just
good.
pretty low key, like pretty mellow people, not really into anything all that extreme. So yeah, that about does it. I just started reading David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest, so I'm about
Oh,
70
I was gonna
pages
read
in.
that. Is that the huge one?
Yes, I was going to say I'm about 70 pages in out of 5 million.
Yeah.
So far it's amazing, but it's so bizarre. He has like an entire chapter that's something like 8 pages, and these are like big bulky pages, and it's a single paragraph, the whole thing.
Well.
Stuff like that, just these stylistic choices. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation, is writing, because I've finally gotten back into reading. Like I wasn't really into it for a
Mhm.
few years, and now I'm really back into it. So I like novels that have like a little something to chew on. So I really like Dostoevsky. Like I read Brothers Karamazov a couple times, Crime and Punishment, and all that.
Mhm.
I like having something to chew on a bit, but while still being entertaining. Like I want it to actually be entertaining
Yeah.
when possible.
No, I jump in and out of, like, I'll read a lot for a month and then the next month I won't read a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
I went to the comic shop with my friend that he goes every week, and I was like, let me go with you. And then now I'm starting to become obsessed with, like, because I used to just buy trade comics, like a collection of a few, and
Yeah.
then I went with him and bought like the ones that came out that day, and I was like, this is
Okay.
exciting. I want to do
Oh
this now.
yeah. Yeah. If money were no object, I'd
Yeah.
probably get into that too.
Oh, and I have a few friends. I guess one's like a drummer, but he does a lot of gigs. But do you do like gigs around where you live or anything? Or
Very rarely. I played at a Pokemon convention here in
Mhm.
Memphis back in November. I'll play for weddings very rarely. I mean, generally that kind of thing. Well, like weddings, for example, I don't really like it,
Yeah.
but it pays decently. Like I'm
Hmm.
going to charge enough to make it worth it. And then things like conventions, I really enjoy it. And playing for the Pokemon one was awesome. I got to actually open for Jason Page, who's the guy who sang the Pokemon theme song.
Oh wow.
So I was his opening act at this convention. I love doing those. I just don't really seek them out or like market myself for them. So I've only ever done a few. I opened for TwitchCon in 2018. Um, I played at a convention in Minnesota called 2DCon, and then I
Hmm.
played for this Pokemon one. That's really it. But I may push a little more to do stuff like Magfest next year, play for that. But in terms of just like gigging, no. Like, playing
Hmm.
at bars and restaurants or whatever, I prefer not to.
Yeah.
Not really my thing.
Yeah, because I have one friend that tonight he's in the opera doing percussion stuff. So then, and
Oh,
it's
cool.
the
Very cool.
dress rehearsals tonight. So he's like, oh, I could get you 2 free tickets. So we're going to check out the opera.
What opera
He said
company is it?
it's, oh, the company. I'm not sure. Or maybe it was something Florida
Oh,
opera
this
company.
is in Florida?
Hmm. It's in
I
Miami,
don't yeah, I don't know anything about Miami's orchestra. I mean, I'm sure they've got
but he always does
some good
gigs
ones.
like and rehearsals and stuff.
Yeah, the Miami Symphony Orchestra, I would assume is
He
what
does
it is.
stuff with them, I think, a lot.
That's very cool. They're probably great.
Hmm.
I would just assume Miami's going to have a pretty top shelf orchestra.
Yeah. And
Very
have you
cool.
played, I guess, your some of your albums live ever, or done, even though they're
Um
other people's music, or help?
Not really. Like the albums, typically, I kind of only learn the songs well enough to record
To
them,
record them
and
and
then
then
I don't really like I don't keep them in my hands, so to
Mhm.
speak. I'm not really like the best concert pianist, so I don't have tons of pieces like really polished and ready to just perform perfectly every time.
Mhm.
Not quite my strength.
Um, I guess because I started playing guitar in college when I had my quarter life crisis. And I was like, I don't do anything cool. And then I bought a guitar, but it wasn't until recently that I was like, oh, let me kind of learn how it works and learn the
Mm,
notes and how to
yeah,
read
yeah,
music kind of.
right.
And then my girlfriend has a piano, so I was learning kind of like the easy way, the fake book way of playing.
Hmm. Well, there's numerous approaches. People use
Hmm.
things like a piano roll and synesthesia and stuff, which I find it kind of silly, but that's just coming from my experience, right? There's all kinds of ways to approach it.
Hmm.
And with YouTube these days, I mean, there's
Yeah,
so
no, you
much
could
that
find
you could
everything.
learn. Yeah, yeah, you could do it without a teacher if you're diligent with, the resources available.
Hmm. Are you able to play other instruments just with your knowledge of piano or
Um,
and music
well,
or?
other keyboard instruments for
Hmm.
sure. Any instrument that's built around a keyboard that's like the piano, I can play at least, sort of. I play flute a little bit. I sing decently. And then like hand percussion stuff, bongos, shakers, whatever. But that's like not, playing those a little bit is fairly easy. Playing them like really, really well, not so much.
And who's your favorite pianist, whether it's like a
Ooh,
keyboardist in a band or just a
ooh,
concert pianist or anything like that?
that's a tough one, but a couple that come to mind right away. Hiromi, she's a Japanese jazz pianist. Hiromi
Mhm.
Uehara. Brad Meldau is an American jazz pianist. Um, they're kind of my two big ones. I'm trying to think who else for piano specifically, like really does it for me. Nobody comes to mind at the moment.
Mhm.
I think they'd kind of be my two favorites.
Yes, yes, that's all. Because I usually do like an about you type thing in the end,
I
but we kind
talked
of did
I
that the
talked
whole way.
more than enough about
No, we did that
myself.
the whole way through, kind of.
Yeah,
Like
you
we
you
learned about your history of games and stuff like that early on.
you have more than enough information about me. I think people will be more than satisfied with that.
Hmm. I guess you want to. I know you have your Twitch channel, but anything else you want to talk about or plug?
My YouTube actually, so I think
Hmm.
it's really just youtube.com/Trevor Gomes. I think, you don't have to do a big string of letters and numbers. Um, I've been pushing that a bit more recently because I want to get it past the hurdle to monetization
Hmm.
status. Um, and there's a lot of stuff that I've put on it that I'm very proud of. Just a lot of things I'm really happy with, and it's so hard to actually get much attention on it at all.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I'd say the YouTube. If anybody wants to support what I do, that would be the place to look. Start with the YouTube. But I have, the Twitch channel. I've got a Twitter. I've got a Patreon. But I'd just start with the YouTube and then go from there.
Hmm. Well, thanks for talking to me today. It was really
Yeah.
cool to meet you.
Yeah.
I
Happy
look
to.
forward to seeing hopefully your game in a few years.
Yes, yes. Well, we can do an interview about that when the time
Yeah,
comes.
that'll be cool.
Coming full
Mhm.
circle.
Yeah. And are you streaming tonight or?
No, tomorrow. Probably at 4 p.m. Central time on twitch.tv/88bit music.
And then I guess what's your streaming days then? Fridays,
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Monday, Wednesday, I do 4 to 7 p.m. Central.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I guess that does it.
Yeah.
Just let me know if you need anything else, and I'll shoot you this stuff pretty quickly here.
All right. Thanks so much. And
Yeah.
we'll talk again in a few years.
Yeah.
Maybe before.
Probably before. All
Yeah.
right, man. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.